It's been a long day, but we have quite a treat for you. Some great content to go with your hopefully delightful dessert. I want to thank everyone up here, all these panelists, for taking some time out of their schedule to be a part of the program. I want to thank Lisa Carmel for just being such a great friend and supporter of Medtech and for pulling this thing together. So thank you, Lisa. Tonight we're talking about investing in Medtech. And we want to know, I know a lot of us want to know what these investors want, like right now. And our moderator really doesn't need an introduction, but I'm going to give her one anyway. It's Lisa Carmel. She's Vice President of Strategy at Ximedica. They're a full-service medtech product development firm. Ximedica partners with big strategic startups and investors. Sounds like a good audience for them here. They develop state-of-the-art medical devices, diagnostics, drug delivery devices, digital platforms, wearables, and robotics, and Lisa leverages her experience, commercialization, to help forge productive client relationships. She's the best if you know her, and if you don't know her, come meet her. Lisa's got 25 years international commercialization of healthcare products. I'm going to skip to the thing that I love right now. In her spare time, she authors the Medtech Pioneers blog, focusing on standout innovators and their groundbreaking work. She does a terrific job, and I'm so happy to have all of you here. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Scott, and thanks to Scott for pulling this all together. Oh, my God. So we've got an amazing panel. I'm going to jump straight to the meat. Wow. Straight to the meat of the matter here. It's about what VCs want right now, and we will start with introductions. Terri.
Hi, everyone. Happy to be here. I'm Terri Burke. I'm a venture partner with Epidarix Capital. We'll talk more about what we're looking for as a fund, but my background is operating. I spent over a decade in senior VP roles at Edwards Lifesciences, from marketing to business development to general management. So really happy to be here.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kyle, and I'm with MVM Partners. We've got offices in Boston and London. I guess we'll talk a bit about our investment criteria a little bit later. I'm a physician by training, went to work for Bain for a bit after, and then joined MVM about 4 years ago.
Good evening. My name is Stephen Rolfe. I'm with W.L. Gore. I'm with the Medical Products Division and one of the leaders in our product incubator for innovation. I've worked within medical device for about 25, 30 years, held various VP level positions with Baxter, Medtronic, GE Healthcare, and now, as I said, I work within that innovation group where Gore looks to partner with mid-stage and early-stage companies. So thank you for the opportunity this evening.
Chris Velis from Miraki Innovation, Cambridge, Massachusetts, but we also have offices in Dubai, Belgium, and Japan.
Allan May. I'm founder of Life Science Angels. I've been a CEO and also founder and entrepreneur in a number of companies. For example, NanoStim, which was the first leadless cardiac pacemaker. I was in a venture fund with Dr. Tom Fogarty. I'm now in a venture fund with Paul LaViolette, who you heard this morning, and Greg Madden. And glad to be here. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Dennis McWilliams. I'm a partner at Sante Ventures, but most of my career has been on the entrepreneur side. Started out in biotech and tissue regeneration space, and then in the mid-2000s made the, at the time, I thought it was a great move into medical devices, but of course, the next decade of medical devices after that was really challenging. But then decided to make the shift into venture capital and joined Sante 2 years ago and invest in biotech and medical device companies.
Okay, now first topic we have is literally what the topic for the panel is, which is what are you looking for? And can you give us an idea for all the startup founders and teams in the audience?
Happy to. So Epidarix Capital, we're based in the US and the UK. So those are the two markets that we invest in. So if you are outside the US or UK, unfortunately you're outside of our investment thesis. We invest in really early stage companies. So we like seed or A round investments. We are open to starting companies. So we're pretty early. And we also try to find technologies and companies that are outside the traditional areas, so under ventured geographies within the US and the UK, therapeutics and devices. And devices tends to be a focus on what we call therapeutic devices, so implantables. We do not invest in diagnostics or imaging or instruments.
So I think amongst the panelists, I might be on a slightly later stage. So we're mainly focused on commercial stage businesses that have some amount of revenue traction. We're not overly prescriptive with having a set threshold. I guess what we really care about is, a company being in an initial set of accounts such that we can learn about the perspectives of people who have actually used the products. As well as get some early indication regarding the commercial metrics, utilization, things like that. Aside from that, we're really subsector agnostic. So if you look at our portfolio, the investments have spanned Medtech, pharma, diagnostics, wireless medical technologies, even the contract manufacturers that make all of those different products. So you should think of us as someone who's quite open to looking at anything that's out there, so long as it addresses a real unmet need and that it has a large addressable market that it's going after.
And I think, for Gore, what we typically look at is really the early or mid-stage companies. So companies that may have some early preclinical data or maybe first-in-man data. And they're the type of companies that would appeal to Gore. And similar to the earlier comment, really looking at large market opportunities, unmet clinical needs, those markets with the large megatrend, really where there's an unmet need, growing opportunity, where there's an opportunity to differentiate with enabling Gore technology in partnership maybe with an early stage or a mid-stage company.
I'd say that really what we're looking for is a very big problem, the very best technological solution to that problem, and a team that has the mindset and the lack of ego that can apply the technology to solve that problem. And if I've got those three things aligned, it's going to be a winner. Don't care about the stage. Don't care if nothing's been started. Don't care if it's far along the path. What I care about is that those three things are aligned, and we go from there.
So let's start with the healthcare system just exploded, right? We've just seen more change in the last year, maybe 2 years, than in the last 20 years. So what we're looking for is not the stuff we looked for before 2 years ago. What we're looking for is stuff that takes advantage of the explosion. This is what we've all been hoping for. We knew that healthcare could only be dragged kicking and screaming into the 21st century. We knew we had the technology to do a number of things that were vital to do. We knew there were problems that we could solve. What wasn't there? Business models, right? Where we haven't innovated is in business models. So you look around here today, listen to Daniel Hawkins, listen to a number of these companies talking. What they're doing is not just solving problems. They're providing solutions to the healthcare system that reduce total cost while providing better service. We have a system that costs too much, we hate it, and gives you shitty service. That's what's changing right now, and what we're looking for are the people who have the technologies and vision to drive that change. Stage doesn't matter, sector doesn't matter. None of that matters. Taking advantage of finally the dislocation we've been looking for the last 30 years, that matters.
Well, I'd say that's a mic drop. I mean, that was very, very good. I took everything I was going to say. I think actually what's interesting is you heard the different perspectives here is there are a lot of similarities in terms of what venture is looking for. I mean, we're all looking for the unmet need. We're all looking to, for that guarantee of an opportunity that's there. But I think it's also important that there's different gradations of what different VC firms look at. Some, again, at MVM, they're looking later stage because that tends to imply a different risk profile, in a different opportunity profile of the deals that you're looking at. At Sante, we're early stage, and so we tend to, look for, we'll take more regulatory risk, but we won't share on market risk. And so, I think each venture fund kind of looks and manages its risks differently. And I think it's really important before you approach a VC fund to really try to have an understanding of the flavors of things that they like. And the best way to do that is look at the deals they've done. And if the deals that they've done look like the deal that you're looking to propose, that's a really good signal that it's going to fit. If it doesn't, you're probably pushing a rock up a hill because it doesn't match some internal thesis that I'm sure they'll be very glad to tell you about.
Okay, so thank you. Let's see, next topic is trends that we're seeing right now. And how about Chris, you want to take it?
Trends. There's so many trends. I guess I'll just cover one in the time we have. Convergence is contagious. I gave the keynote speech here last year, and one of the themes was convergence. And I've heard this convergence about 30 times here in the last 2 days. So what's convergence? Convergence is different industries coming together to form something new that didn't exist in the past. It's the integration of information technology, insurance, consumer products, retail space, medical devices, artificial intelligence, so on and so forth, into a new industry that didn't exist before. The paradigm is going to shift around this concept of convergence, and it will be uncontrollable. You will have to move with it because the old paradigm of medical device, pharmaceutical, biotech, and life sciences is destroyed. If you're thinking in that context, you do not understand what is now happening in the industry. And so that is the number one trend that I see. We'll be talking at Thursday morning about some of the other trends.
Terri? Kyle?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really, really good point, and I think one trend that kind of plays off that a bit is different companies that enable transitions from more acute care settings to less acute care settings quicker. So this plays out in a lot of different subsectors. For instance, there's a whole wave of companies now that are helping to take procedures that were historically done in operating rooms and enable those to be done in ASCs or office settings. I think those types of businesses are really interesting to us because they really accomplish some of the goals that we've talked about up here, right? Those types of technologies that enable those are lowering costs, they're improving outcomes for patients, and I think when you have those different things aligning, you end up with a really promising investment. To Chris's point, I think in this sort of general trend plays out in other areas beyond medical devices. For instance, in wireless monitoring technologies, vital signs technologies, for instance, have enabled people to be discharged from hospitals much faster and to end up back home, which again lowers costs for the healthcare system, helps to improve the patient satisfaction, among other things. So I think just in terms of a macro trend that we've really been trying to invest around is how do we get behind those companies that are enabling things that typically had to be done in a high cost, high acuity setting and bring those to settings that are less costly.
Let's see, I think it was Stephen, on trend,
Okay, thank you, Lisa. What's interesting there, Lisa, I was actually here, I think, it's 14 months ago as well. And one of the comments I shared was the increase in remote patient monitoring, telehealth, telemedicine. And again, this is just pure sort of coincidence. This question's come up this evening. And obviously, because of COVID-19, that really accelerated the adoption of remote patient monitoring, telemedicine, telehealth, also reimbursement coverage. And where I'm going with this is, what I'm seeing is, there's more smart technology out there. There's more, connected devices. And, to some of the earlier comments, getting patients out of hospital quicker, if you can actually monitor them, improve, quality of life. And it's not just about getting data, it's about having smart connected devices that actually provides meaningful information, to healthcare professionals. And that's why, there's been a massive increase now in reimbursement coverage. HCPs are getting reimbursed now. There's codes, etc. And I think that's going to continue as well. Empowering patients, remote care. So that's certainly an area is disease management and remote monitoring and the connected devices.
Great. I think I was just going to say to our panelists, I think we're doing well on time. And and if we wanted to talk now about a deal or an investment that you've made that you're particularly excited about. I'll let Dennis start.
I thought you were going to start. Yeah.
This is breaking news, yeah?
It is breaking news.
Well,
This is like the Meatloaf song.
I don't know that it's that dramatic. No, I think back on the theme, Chris mentioned a convergence. I mean, I think the deal that Terri and I just closed today in the ischemic stroke space is interesting because stroke is an area where you've seen all these different types of technologies. You've seen digital diagnostic technologies. You've seen new biotechnologies. You're seeing rehab technology, post-stroke care, really make an impact on a very devastating disease state. And the company Pulsion that we invested in today with Epidarix and a couple of other funds, it was represented kind of a new technology paradigm, in the actual removal of the clots. But as part of this broader continuum of taking advantage of the fact that we can identify stroke patients earlier, and if you can revascularize these patients sooner, they're going to have a much stronger effect. And Terri, I don't know what you want to add.
Yeah, well, you said a lot. That's great. I would just add that for this particular deal, it exemplifies what I think is so important, which is understanding the value proposition of your technology. So you don't want to be a technology in search of a market. You need to have a technology that has a really clear unmet need, where there's a patient population that's clearly defined, that can be a technology potentially disruptive or additive in the space that physicians can get excited about in terms of using. And I think Dennis alluded to this earlier, the market does need to be clear. And so this particular one in ischemic stroke is really clear. We're really clear on what the technology offers and how it can be potentially beneficial for patients in an additive way. So I think that's just such an important part of attracting venture capital, is really understanding your value proposition and taking the time, no matter how early you are, to really think about where will this technology fit, who will use it, what will need to change, either practice patterns or reimbursement, what's my regulatory pathway, and how will I impact patients. And so this has been just a great opportunity to impact a devastating disease process.
Yeah, I guess a deal that I'm particularly fired up about was one we did back in November. It's called GT Medical. GT stands for gamma-tile, which is a new form of treatment for brain tumors. Brain tumors are something that probably affects many people that are here, or at least have had family members or friends that were impacted. I think in the U.S. alone, there's something like 300,000 people a year that are diagnosed with brain tumors, and even more than that globally. And unfortunately, despite all the advances in care that we've seen in oncology, something like 2/3 of patients with newly diagnosed brain tumors have less than 5 years left to live in their lives. So when we think about really large unmet market needs, I think it starts with something that looks like that, a clinical picture that's quite, that very obviously needs better solutions. And so the current standard of care for brain tumors is to surgically remove the tumor and then use external beam radiation after the surgery to kill any residual tumor cells. But external beam has a lot of limitations. Principally, since it's externally applied, it can't really target the tumor bed that easily. Since the beams have to go through healthy brain tissue, they oftentimes cause complications that then make it difficult for the patients to walk or to remember things. But even perhaps more important than all of that, external beam requires patients to keep coming back and forth from the hospital, which if you have only a limited amount of time left in your life, the last thing you want to do is keep going back and forth from the hospital. So what makes gamma-tile really unique, and I think really addresses a big unmet need, is that it's actually placed at the time of surgery, so it doesn't require any follow-up visits, and it naturally resorbs over time. And what it does is it delivers a very high dose of radiation in a very targeted way. So it helps to kill those tumor cells that are in the tumor bed, but it doesn't cause any off-target effects because it can be applied very locally rather than passing through healthy tissue. So, I think that's a really good example of something that has a big unmet market need, and I think they've come up with a very unique solution to it.
And excuse me, and for Gore being strategic, as I mentioned earlier, it's really around, can we partner with a company where we can enable that with Gore technology? Because Gore, historically is a material-based company. So can we use our material science, our material capabilities, and partner with a company along with their technology, their capabilities, to really solve that unmet clinical need or that opportunity? And where it could be a sort of win-win for both companies or both entities. And also, really, what we're looking for, to enter into any type of agreement, is where it's going to be a win for the patient, the payer, the physician, and the provider as well. For the early stage companies or the mid stage companies, to have some level of information around the business model, the go-to-market strategy, and the market access, reimbursement, and coverage. Again, we're not looking for a lot of detail, but some initial thoughts around what would that strategy look like going to market and commercialization. So that's what sort of Gore already looks for, a partnership and enablement with the Gore technology. So it's really a win-win for both companies in a sort of unmet need, growing market, or a mega trend.
Yeah.
I guess I got extra time. So we only invest in our favorites, and there are 5 of them. But I can't tell you about 3 of them. So I'll tell you about 2, because 3 are stealth. The first is called Arctic Fox. And Arctic Fox is out of Massachusetts General Hospital, Harvard Medical School technology. It follows on some prior technologies, and it basically allows us to melt that COVID-15 pounds that you gained off of you quickly and safely. We've done our first 12 patients, and it looks to be not only safe, but superior to competitive products. In the safety study, we got clinical efficacy data, and it's impressive. My second favorite that I can talk about is called Boa Biomedical. And Boa Biomedical is the first pan-pathogenic countermeasure. And I call it a countermeasure because there are no other treatments in the world that I know, or diagnostics that I know, that work no matter what the pathogen is. It can be a virus, it can be a bacteria, it can be a protozoa, it can be a fungus. In any case, we're able to identify it and diagnose it instantly in a mass spec machine. We're also able to track the impact that that pathogen has on a patient's body, whether the patient is getting better or worse, and whether an intervention is working or not. And then finally, we've taken the underlying protein that's the base of this technology, and we've put it in a filter, a dialysis filter. And we're able to remove the precursor to that cytokine storm that you hear about directly from the bloodstream. So in other words, we can move the pathogens and their byproducts out of patients' blood. Last week, we began our clinical studies, and it's already showing the promise that we had hoped. I'm very proud that this is also being done in conjunction with the United States Department of Defense. It rides off of $150 million of research that happened at DARPA, and it was on 60 Minutes last week. If you roll back a couple of weeks, you'll see Matt Hepburn, one of our colleagues on 60 Minutes, describing the technology and the other amazing things that the Department of Defense is doing for patients in the fight against infectious disease. We've received $50 million under 3 different grants with the Department of Defense to accelerate this technology to help with the COVID pandemic, but it will work independent of the COVID pandemic. And it does make me and our team feel like we're doing something really, really, really important during a time when the world really, really needs this kind of technology and help.
Exactly how many pounds does it take off?
Well, how many do you want taken off?
That's what we're all asking. And they always say, oh, we can't do that many. Okay, so look, this is about taking cost out of the system. So those of you who are on the hospital side or provider side understand that every single pitch, every hospital administrator hears every day, all day long, says, we will reduce your cost. And when the hospital administrator says, well, that's really good, what do you got for proof? Nothing. They have a bunch of hypotheses and a bunch of theories. So the winners are going to be the ones who walk into the hospital and say, here is how we take cost out of your system. We've run this study, we've shown these data, and this is why it's going to work for you. So that's really an important thing. We're beyond the different gadget with 20% improvement and blah, blah over time. We're in a whole different world now, and cost has to come down. We're paying 2 times as much for a healthcare system that is crappy, and we can't afford it. So cost has to come down. Imagine now that in the second half of this year, some therapies that previously you had to go to the hospital to receive, or certainly to your doctor's office or an outpatient center to receive, can be delivered to you at Walgreens or CVS. And why would they do that? Well, because the alternative to the employers who have employees who have particular conditions is biologics that cost 30, 60, $100,000 a pop, and CVS is going to charge $1,000. That's a lot of money, but it beats the hell out of $30,000. And so watch these changes in healthcare, drive these changes in healthcare. This is the kind of stuff that is really going to incite investors going, I think, into this next 5 years.
Can I tell you about one of our investments, Keela Health? Well, it's an investment we did with Oliver at Intuitive. But again, back to your point on hospital costs. I mean, it is the big problem that's out there. We can't afford the healthcare that we're providing, and so companies that can address that are great. And in Keela, what we're doing is we're looking at surgical complications and using analytics to predict patients and predict interventions that can reduce those costs and complications. But I think it fits right in that theme, and I think even like hardcore device companies are having to rethink their cost models. I mean, we heard on the robotics panel earlier, that they're going to service models as opposed to capital models. So I think it's on everybody's mind, and I think if you're not thinking about it or if you haven't figured out that problem for your solution that you're trying, it's going to be really hard to raise capital.
And sorry, but just a quick connection to data. So the stuff we're doing now doesn't generate data. So if you ask me what intelligent surgery, well, I think you guys were saying it on the panel, it's data generation and the use of that data to provide healthcare. So collecting objective data, not just subjective stuff. You're watching a physician do something in an animal lab or a cadaver lab. No. You're collecting data on how they perform. That is going to matter for certification. It's going to matter for consolidation of procedures within hospital systems. It's going to matter for what your insurance costs from malpractice carriers. These are the kinds of changes that are coming.
Anything more to add? I think we're ready for Q&A. Hey, Scott. Pantel.
He's
Hello?
at the bar.
Does anyone have any questions? Any questions?
They're ready for the bar to open.
I think they're ready for the bar to open. No.
There's a question.
Okay.
Here we go.
This question is for Chris Velis. Sir. Why is no ego so important?
Well, ego really is the enemy of excellence. We get caught up in our own ideas, and we're unable to surpass and get beyond these ideas. You know, sometimes you hear with entrepreneurs that, you know, the idea, the thing they have is like their baby. And it being wrong or it not fitting in some place in the world really prevents them from taking it to be what it needs to be. And when you act in an egoless way, you're open to ideas, you're open to other people's thoughts, you're open to experimentation and changing the format of what it is that you're trying to create. So getting caught up in a product or a company really can stand in the way of solving the problem that you're trying to address. So I think in every way, ego ends up being the enemy of really doing something well. And if you're aspiring to be kind of the greatest person, the greatest thing that you can be, you got to get out of your own way. And the people around you have to learn how to get out of their own way and put the mission, the purpose first. And if you're driven by that, then you end up getting there. You end up getting there. So I hope that answers your question.
Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate it.